We've got the initial injury report for Cleveland and Cincinnati going into NFL Week 1, and it includes names like Denzel Ward, Joe Burrow, and even Marquise Goodwin. So let's get right into it, starting with Denzel Ward, who was a limited participant in practice today. Now, he is still in concussion protocol, but overall, I would say this is very encouraging and good news for Denzel Ward. No player was not able to practice, whether they were a full participant or at least a limited participant for Cleveland today. So Stefanski said that Ward has been in meetings, he's been in walkthroughs, but he, of course, has to clear all of the concussion protocol steps in order to return to the field by Sunday. Now, Ward unfortunately went down with that concussion, or at least went to concussion protocol on August 26th, the preseason finale. So it'll be almost 2 weeks later when he plays, hopefully, against the Cincinnati Bengals. I am optimistic now that Ward will be able to play. Having him be limited on Wednesday definitely gets him on the right track to be able to go on Sunday. And the Browns need Denzel Ward. He has been a Cincinnati killer. In his career against the Bengals, 16 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, and 2 touchdowns. Denzel Ward had that incredible 99-yard touchdown at pick 6. 2 years ago now? He has been a nightmare for Joe Burrow. And in his last 4 seasons as a whole, Denzel Ward has unfortunately not always been the most available player, never playing 16 games in a year. But the last 2 years, he has come very close, if we're being honest. 14 games and 15 games, and he has never gone below 2 interceptions in his NFL career. Having Denzel Ward, I'm not going to say is absolutely essential because I love what they have in Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome, but it's pretty darn close to essential when you take into account the Cincinnati Bengals' 3-headed receiving monster. That is Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, who T. Higgins might be a number 2 in Cincinnati. He would be a number 1 by a mile in a lot of teams. So that paired with Tyler Boyd, who casually chimes in for 750 plus yards and 5 touchdowns, it is all hands on deck when you play the Cincinnati Bengals as a defensive back, which means you need your ace. You need your number 1 guy in Denzel Ward, because if you shift everyone down the line, all of a sudden Tyler Boyd is going up against some practice squad corner, and that could be a tough day and a tough matchup. So definitely want to see Denzel Ward play on Sunday, of course, and with him being limited in practice today, I feel like he's on a good path to return, but don't want to count your chickens before they hatch. Fingers crossed the Warden will be ready by Sunday. Now, before we get on to the rest of the injury news and notes, make sure you help grow the channel by sharing today's video. Let other Browns fans know about the Denzel Ward injury news and update. And if you share our video over to Twitter and tag me at Matthew Peterson, I'll actually give a shout out. So Billy Lingerol, the Brown Tiger, Joshua Miller, there are so many MVPs that share our content, Cam from Canada, over on Twitter. And if you want to get a shout out on a future show, share this to Twitter, tag me at Matthew Peterson, and I'll show you some love on a future video. Other injury news to get to before we get to Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Marquise Goodwin, quick update here. Kevin Stefanski said Goodwin is on track to return to the field from blood clots. Goodwin, that is, suffered blood clots in his legs and his lungs that caused him to miss the entire preseason and training camp. Of course, when he was not kept on the NFI list, the non-football injury list, to start the year, which would have knocked him out for the first 4 weeks of the season. To me, that signaled that the Browns believe Goodwin is going to be coming back to the field sooner rather than later. Now, over the last 4 years, here are his stats. Last year with Seattle, 387 yards and 4 touchdowns. He is not a takeover receiver by any stretch, but his speed is something that defenses have to respect. And when Goodwin steps on the field, safeties take a step back. They know that he can stretch the field. He's going to have games where he is 0 dark 30 and you don't see or hear his name at all. But he's going to have some games where he just takes over and he goes off for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And those games remind you why you paid him one year, $1.7 million. So that is the positive injury news on Cleveland. All players were practicing in some capacity today, whether it's full participant or limited. Now, as for the Bengals, we all want to know whether or not Joe Burrow or it's not Trevor Siemian that's backing up Cincinnati. I can't remember who it is. No, maybe it is Trevor Siemian. But regardless, head coach Zach Taylor said Joe Burrow is expected to practice in full today. This puts him on track to start Sunday's game versus the Browns. Burrow, speaking to the media himself, sounded very confident that he will be ready to go. Now, there are some rumors about, a big contract extension coming in that if it doesn't happen by Sunday, could that keep him off the field? No. Burrow shut that down really quick. He said that is the last thing he is thinking about right now. All eyes are on Cleveland. So it looks like the Browns are going to get an elite matchup between Deshaun Watson and Joe Burrow. And when you look at Joe Burrow's career against the Browns, it's not some of his best work, believe it or not. He is 1-4 against Cleveland. He has never won in Cleveland. In fact, the last time the Bengals won in Cleveland, Andy Dalton was the quarterback, and the year was 2017. Now, I do want to show these stats from last season when Joe Burrow also missed all of training camp and preseason, and that showed in the first 2 weeks of the season. We showed this on yesterday's show. Joe Burrow last year, he did not get off to a great start, and he might have been able to benefit from playing in the training camp or preseason ball because the numbers back that up. I mean, last year, week 1, 4 interceptions, a loss to the Steelers. Week 2, they lost to a Dallas Cowboys team without Dak Prescott. He was limited to 199 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, Pittsburgh and Dallas both had great defenses last year for the most part, but it does go to show that if you miss all of training camp and preseason, you can ask Deshaun Watson, taking time away from football, you can be a little bit rusty coming back, and I wonder which Joe Burrow the Browns are going to see. The Joe Burrow that takes his team to the AFC Championship, or the Joe Burrow that got off to a slow start last year because he missed all of training camp. Now, with all that being said, predict the score for me. Browns versus Bengals. Give me your best score prediction down below. I changed my score prediction maybe 7-8 times throughout the entire week. But for now, I'm going to try and stick to Browns win at 30-26. Switching gears, let's talk about the new depth chart that came out. The Browns released their first official depth chart, I guess you could call it. And it had one surprise on it, and that was Jordan Elliott starting over Shelby Harris. That was not something I expected to see. I surely thought Shelby Harris would start ahead of Jordan Elliott because, frankly, most people could start ahead of Jordan Elliott, but especially a guy like Shelby Harris, who Cleveland signed midway through training camp because they identified a growing issue on the defensive line, which is after Dalvin Tomlinson, we had the same defensive line pretty much that we had last season. Now, when you compare Shelby Harris and Jordan Elliott head-to-head from last year, to me, this seems like a no-brainer, right? I mean, look at just the PFF rankings by themselves. Shelby Harris was a top 20 defensive tackle. Jordan Elliott was a bottom 20 defensive tackle. I want to believe this is a Mike Tomlin type typo where Kevin Stefanski, all NFL head coaches, they hate depth charts. They hate it because the league makes them do it, and anytime the league makes the coaches or GMs do anything, they don't want to do it. These are alphas of alphas. They do not like being told what to do, so they kind of just put together a depth chart. They might honestly pass this off to the intern, and maybe the intern just had a copy and paste error from last year's depth chart or the last preseason depth chart and forgot to swap Shelby Harris in with Jordan Elliott. But I sure hope that we're going to see Jordan Elliott on the bench more than Shelby Harris in week 1. Give me Shelby Harris all day long. I think this is just a classic Stefanski typo. For a guy that went to Penn, maybe he's not the best at Excel. I don't know. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's show, our sportsbook partner, BetUS, you guys know they have the best deal in the world for the dog pound. Chatsports.com/bet, promo code Browns125. When you put all that information in, they're going to give you a 125% deposit bonus. Now, here are the week 1 odds. I am all over Cleveland, not just +3. Give me Cleveland money line, baby. The Browns are going to have their first home opener for Kevin Stefanski. Vibes are going to be high. Burrow sucks against the Browns. He's never won in Cleveland. You get Denzel Ward back, Joey B's daddy. Yeah, I'm all over the Brownies. Now, before we get to the next segment, which is Deshaun Watson, and we have an interesting little quote to share from Anthony Walker, who talked about his new quarterback because Walker, a longish time, 4 years in Indianapolis, had some run-ins with the Houston Texans and Deshaun Watson. And I just wanted to share this quote with you guys I thought you could find interesting. Anthony Walker, when asked about Deshaun Watson, said, "I told him he looks like his old self. That's scary because 2020, he almost beat us twice by himself when I was in Indy. So to see him have that confidence that he'll be even better is huge for us. I expect it. Deshaun Watson last year, we don't need to rehash what was an underwhelming season. There were a lot of good moments. There were a lot of good throws that the media doesn't want to talk about. But by and large, I think we can all agree that was far from Deshaun Watson's A game, and we were all expecting a big bounce back season like what he did in 2020 when he led the NFL in passing with 4,800 yards for a team that won 4 games, if I recall correctly. So I'm going to say it for, I don't even know how many times now, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 times. Mark me down, and this is something you can screen record, and if I'm wrong in 6 months, I'll own it. But I'm a believer that Deshaun Watson will get back to the top of the QB mountain, right? He's going to be there with all the big wigs in the AFC because he was there when he led the NFL in passing. And he had a really interesting quote today where he's like, I don't want to get back to 2020. I want to be better than I was in 2020. And with Nick Chubb in the backfield and Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and David Njoku, he's got the cast and crew to maybe even be better than he was in 2020. So you can mark me down as someone that is buying in on the Deshaun Watson bounce back hype. So predictive for me, will Watson throw for 4,000 yards? Type Y for yes or N for no. Let me know down in the comment section. I don't think it's happened since Brian Sipe did it probably in the 80s. So we're going on a very long time without a 4,000-yard passer in Cleveland. Let me know what your honest opinion is in the comment section. Some other notes that came out of practice today I thought you guys should see before we send you on your way. This one coming in from Scott Petrak, who tweeted out, Browns coach Kevin Stefanski, I don't think you change Nick Chubb's role. There are things we'll do differently on offense, which is the case every year. Nick's still a big part of our offense. You're not crazy for connecting the dots of $230 million quarterback. The Browns want to pass it a lot. Does that mean Nick Chubb is in for a smaller workload? I'm going to tell you why I don't think that's the case. But let's look at Nick Chubb's stats over the last 4 years, where you can see the guy's a legend. He's never averaged below 5 yards a carry. He has not gone below 1,000 yards the last 2 years. He had some injury run-ins between 2020 and 2021, but last year he was healthy. He was prolific at the start of the season, kind of slowed down a little bit in the second half, coincidentally, when Watson came in. But I don't think that's a product of Deshaun Watson taking over. In fact, here's why I think Nick Chubb is still going to be Nick Chubb, right? He made up 56% of the carries in 2022 for the Browns. So a little over half going to 24. Kareem Hunt had 123 carries. There's no Kareem Hunt on this roster. Jerome Ford is not going to get 123 carries. So I think what you can expect to see is Nick Chubb's workload actually increase, where most people might think Nick Chubb's going to get less touches now that Deshaun Watson's here. Au contraire, he's going to get more touches actually, because Kareem Hunt is not there to be that thunder and lightning. It's just Nick Chubb now. Jerome Ford is not going to command that many touches each game. Same goes for Pierre Strong Jr. So that 56% of the workload last year across all ball carriers, that number's going to go up. I think Nick Chubb could get up to 60, 65% when you factor in Watson and his run attempts as well, and Elijah Moore and a couple end arounds and things like that. But still, Nick Chubb, his workload's not going to go down. If anything, I think it's going to go up. Now, some other quick notes I want to hit on here. Dustin Hopkins, who was not at practice on Monday, was back at practice today. In fact, he is kicking at the stadium all week long, and that's what you want to see because it's an adjustment kicking by the lake. It's a little bit easier in September compared to the fall months of October and November and into December, but Hopkins is getting used to kicking by the lake and the wind effect or the lake effect and the wind that comes off of it, but we have hopefully a good kicker for this season. To wrap up the show, let's pick a card. We've got Allie Barefoot in the studio today as she continues to get herself ready to toss herself into a larger role here at Chat Sports. And then Big Tex. Big Tex, which one to go with?
Let's go with the 7. Let's go with the...
I can hear you.
Okay.
There you go.
Let's go with the 7 of diamonds.
7 of diamonds?
Yeah.
Allie? 7 diamonds, 9 of diamonds. I'm going to go with the... For Nick Chubb, I'm going to go with the 4 of clubs. Uh-oh. I got to shuffle a little bit more now. I saw that one. Okay, no one picked the 2 of spades. All right, here we go. What'd you say? You said? 8 of diamonds. I should have split the difference. Damn. 8 of diamonds. All right, that is it for today's show. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. It's game week, guys.